Today I'm going to take a little break from our normal everyday stop motioning, and I'm going to do a little bit of arts and crafts to paint a custom head of a figure for a Mythic Legions character, which I will then use for stop motioning. I just can't stop. So the character we're going to be choosing is a skeleton figure, and the head we got is kind of a skeleton. It's an open mouth thing. I picked it up at Legions Con with the intention of trying out kind of doing a custom paint job, and this is my first one that I've done. I've already sprayed them with some primer, used the Army Painter one. Actually, the paint that I got is the same thing. It's actually used for painting miniatures, I think like Warcraft, but it was recommended to me, so I'm going to give it a shot. I also picked up a little pack of paintbrushes so I could have different tip sizes. All right, so here we go. I started off with some white paint on the side. I'm kind of a creature of habit, so I would like to turn him into a mime skeleton because one, I like mimes, and two, I have a bunch of stop motion ideas where I could use a mime, and the fact that he's just a skeleton, in my opinion, makes it a little bit better. And then having a mime warrior, I think we're just going to name him Silent but Deadly, so that'll be his character name. So I'm doing the first coat of white paint. It looks like just on the black primer, it's probably going to take maybe about 2 coats. The first coat is actually going on pretty nicely, but you can still see some of like the surfaces, some of the holes underneath that the black is shining through, which actually, depending on how you're painting it, wouldn't actually be the worst thing. If you're doing like an animal with fur, having some black underneath, like a polar bear, would actually look kind of cool and kind of fitting. But for this character particularly, I would like to get a nice white coat going. So I'm probably going to end up doing a second coat afterwards. And if I need to do more, do less, I could always change it around. And I know you're asking yourself right now, what I intended to do more would be to paint more. If I was intending to do less, I would have to invent time travel so I can go back in time and then warn myself not to do that second or third coat. But I'm going to try to nail it the first time because I genuinely just don't have the time to invent time travel, which in it of itself is ironic. But what I do have time for is to paint a mime skeleton head, and I'm finishing up this nice side coat of white, and it's really coming out nice. The head sculpt I pick up at Legions Con, they had just a ton of different head. I picked up a few other animal heads, but I'm more attached to those. So I want to make sure I know how to paint properly first, which is why I'm testing with the skeleton first, and then I will get to the more challenging animal heads, which I will also have a ton of stop motion ideas for the animals that I chose. So I cannot wait to introduce those guys. And now next up, we are going to add a little bit of black. So just get a little dab. Yeah, this is a tiny head, so the amount of paint that I actually need available to do a coat is really, really tiny. So these paints are probably going to last a while. So now for the black, I would like to go inside the mouth to get black, inside the eye sockets, and then inside the nose, kind of like the cavities of the skull. So this is probably going to be a relatively quick coat because they are really tiny, and I use the smaller tipped paintbrush. So the one I used for the white was a larger brush, so I can do bigger strokes. I didn't have to get into fine detail. I was just covering the face of it. And then for the black one, I want to get a little bit tinier, so I chose one of the really fine point ones. And there's just a ton of options. So I, I probably could have done it with the larger one if I only had the one brush, or if I just had the one brush and it was smaller, then you can use it for everything. Just the wider surfaces might take you a little bit longer. And now let's get into that nice eye socket. And you can see just having the white and the paint on there, the details of the head are actually really starting to pop out. And one of the great things about Mythic Legions, it's got a huge following of customizers. So the availability of these heads that people sculpt and then produce, very widely available. So if you want to take a stab at either painting your own, you can do that, or you can get people who paint them and then sell them, so you can get a really nice, professionally looking head sculpt and painted, so you can put on your figure. I happen to have fun painting, so that's why I want to do it myself. But some of the paint jobs I've seen are just absolutely stunning. And since, as I mentioned, this is the first time I was actually painting a figure, not just painting on like a canvas or paper, I might change my tone completely and be like, this is not for me. And then I'll end up buying some nice ones. But right now, so far, with just a very simple white coat and some black applications, I think I can create it in the vision that I want for it. But we shall see how it's going. Either way, it was a the head itself was a cheap investment. The paint was probably a larger investment, but there's going to be a ton of stuff I can paint: walls, cats, floors, silverware, toys. So uh, watch out. So at this point, I'm going to speed it up a little bit because the rest of what I'm going to be doing for the next few minutes is going to be painting the black and then again on the white. So while that would be fun to watch and talk about, I think I'd rather just kind of breeze through it and get to some of the finer detail points. So I'll see you on the other side. All right, so we just finished up our black and white, and now we are going to add some red now that we've allowed it some time to dry. So for the red, we're going to do the tongue inside the mouth. You can't really see it right now because just the details, you can't really see it because it's all painted black. Once we get the red on there, it's really going to look nice. The first blob of paint that I put out, it looked a little bit watery. It wasn't shaken enough, so I put another glob of paint. I might want to mix up the other one so it doesn't go to waste, but as of right now, we will be using the that second glob. So this is going to require a little bit more of a steady hand for the red because the tongue sits inside the mouth and there's a spot where the tongue sits on top of the inside of the mouth, and I want to make sure that stays black and then the tongue stays red. So I'm just gonna probably go around the outside and just make sure that the cut is really clean. If I do happen to go over, then I could just get a little bit of black paint and then just finally clean it up afterwards, which I'll probably do at the end anyway. But for now, I'd rather do as minimal cleanup work as possible, just how I happen to like the paint. So I am noticing that even though I put a second glob and shook it a little bit more, the red is a lot more liquidy and watery than both the black and the white. So whether or not that's just the color is going to require some more coats, probably more than 2 coats, or if I need to shake a little bit more, which I'll probably check later when I do another coat, because it's really going on. It's not looking red, it's almost looking like maroon because the black is really shining through. So yeah, you can see I've from here I've already painted the red, but as you hold it there, you could barely even see it. It doesn't really look like it, and it's a little bit liquidy, so it's pooling there in the mouth. So I'm just gonna clean that up a little bit. Yeah, so either there's something wrong with my red, or I just need to shake it a little bit more. So I'm gonna give it another good shake and see if that does the trick. And I'm hoping it does. Otherwise, I might have to use another color for the tongue, which maybe like a blue or a purple wouldn't be the worst thing. He's dead, so maybe during death he was poisoned and his tongue changed colors. We can fit in a storyline afterwards, depending on what colors we have available. The good news is, whatever story we come up with, we know he's not going to contradict us and say otherwise, because he's a mime and it's against his nature to speak so. Now, this does seem a little bit thicker. It is going on a little bit better. It's still not as vibrant of a color on the first coat, so I do think we're still going to need some extra coats on there. But I think the shaking really did the trick. I don't think the first time out of the bottle I shook it enough, which now it's kind of a learning for the future colors to make sure I give it a good hell of a shake first. And now I'm just finishing up the tongue. And all right, I will let that dry and then do another coat. But yeah, it's a little bit dark in there just with the shadows and the shading, and it went on very light. But hopefully when we do a little bit more of the coats, it starts to pop out and really stand out. Otherwise, he's gonna have a very dark mouth, which is fine. All right, next up, we're gonna go with the yellow, and that's what we're gonna be using for the teeth. So we'll just put a little dollop on there and just get it ready. We gave it our shake first, so now we are learning our lesson. I mix it with a little bit of white because the strong yellow is not quite what I wanted for his teeth. I didn't want him to look like a dirty pirate. I just wanted him to look like a mime who happened to pass away and his teeth started yellowing, but not due to poor oral hygiene, more just to overall decay, not tooth decay. So, all fitting into his overall storyline. So, the tooth detail on here is very tiny. So, again, I'm using my very fine point brush. It's the finest one that I had in there. And I'm just doing a very light amount of paint on each of them and just the tip on each of the tooth. And it applies the yellow paint. And then I'll go around the inside. It's not really brushing, it's really just dabbing it on and then just making sure at the gum line that I don't go over. So I'll start like further into the tooth and just kind of get as close as possible. And it does seem to be working pretty well. And these heads are designed so that the fine details, like they do come to points and they have creases and divots at spots which do help out. I mean, these were designed by toy customizers for this very reason. So they know what they're doing, and then also the paint makers are also designing for painting miniatures. So they also have paint that's not too watery, not too loose. It they know what they're doing, and we are just the conduit to put them to use and make something out of it. So in my opinion, those teeth look fantastic. This is exactly what I wanted them to look like, and I think they look. I am very happy with the result. And now we're going to head into another Benny Hill type speed up. And I'm going to paint black around the outside of the head, like the back of the head, and do another red application on the tongue. And I will be back to do a little bit more of the finer details. All right, and back, and we are going to get some of our black ready. And what we are going to do is we are going to try to shape the face. So a mime skeleton would wear white face paint. So the back of the head is going to be black, whether or not he put black paint on there all around, or he just got a black skull, or he was burned in the Great Mime Fire of 1842. Any one of these things could have happened, but right now we're just going to focus on the details. So we're going to kind of shape the face almost like an oval around, and we're just going to put it on there, and if we need to adjust it, bring it in, bring it out, depending on whether or not we like it, and then we'll kind of adjust accordingly. So the first pass, I'm just gonna do what I think looks about right, and symmetry is going to be very important for this because mimes spend a lot of time looking in their invisible mirror just to make sure that their paint is perfect. So I want to make sure that it goes over the cheekbones at the same spot. So if you look at him head on, he's got a pretty symmetrical look, and symmetrical in terms of the best of my ability. Because it might not be perfect, and I'm going to be okay with that, and I think our mime is going to be okay with that. And I'm pretty sure my thumb is on wet paint. I'm just throwing that out there right now before I pick it up and check, but I just know that's the case. So we'll have to fix that. but that's a good lesson to be learned. Make sure your paint is either dry before you're handling it or put it on a peg, put it on a Nerf bullet. I've seen that. But ultimately, don't use your fingers to handle the wet paint or it will smudge and then you can get paint everywhere all over your hands, which I'm less concerned about. But yeah, you can see it smudged a little bit on the top, which that's an easy fix. So I'm not, luckily it wasn't like one of the finer details where it really would have set me back. But, and like I said, this is my first attempt at one of these, so it's a learning experience. So what seems like it should have been obvious, like don't handle wet paint with hands, I still had to learn that lesson, and I'm okay with that. And now that I have the outline of the face that I like, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some black paint and fill it in from that line back to the black, which I believe that's what the AC/DC song was about. It was actually about customizing a Mime skeleton action figure. So this is also a history lesson, but I'm going to speed it up again so this way we can just start on to the next detail. So we just allowed our black to dry, which means we are ready to grab some more black and do some of the cooler, finer details, which really kind of make it look more like a mime. Right now, it could be like a Grim Reaper. He's got the hood on and he's got the skeleton face. So the first thing we're gonna do is add some black lipstick to him. Mimes very typically they wear black and white. They use black and white face paint, maybe some accents of red here and there, a la the tongue, because we're not gonna put anything more red on them. Maybe like a teardrop or something like that. We could potentially do a red lipstick, but the mime I would like has the black lipstick, which skeletons don't have lips, but it's going to be around the lip area. So let's say he happened to be wearing his paint when he passed away, and then his skin pulls back onto his skull. The lipstick would still be applied. That's kind of the logic I am following. Plus, it might not be all that realistic to have a living skeleton, so if we suspend belief for just a little bit to make it feasible that he could be wearing lipstick, I'm okay with that. And if anyone has a problem with that, then I'm sorry. So putting the details around the lips so far has actually been the most challenging part so far. We're using the fine brush, but I don't want it to smear into the white of where like the cheeks or the face are. And I also can't do too much closer to the teeth because then I'll get black on the yellow teeth. So it really is it. There's very little wiggle room to make a mistake. But again, if I happen to hit one of the teeth with some black or go over a little bit, I can touch it up afterwards with some white or yellow paint, which is easy enough. But I don't necessarily want to be applying multiple applications of the paint because each application makes it a little bit thicker. You could lose a little bit of the detail. This is really fine paint, so it's probably not that big of an issue if you put one or two extra coats on to kind of correct an issue, but still, I'm just trying to be as careful as possible. And I'm not a pro at putting on lipstick, so I've seen women do it on the train or while driving the car or parked at a red light. They could probably tear through this, and this might be one of the quicker things that they paint on this, but I'm still learning. Maybe if it helps my painting, I'll have to start wearing lipstick. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm willing to make that commitment, but if it's all for the art, then maybe so be it. Or maybe I can come up with a whole series of jokes related to wearing the makeup, and I'll just call that my lipstick. So just throwing that out there as well. So could all be relevant. And I really like the way the mouth looks. Just you have the dark lipstick and then the bright yellow teeth and then the dark inside of the mouth makes the teeth really pop. And now we're going to put the rest of the makeup on the face. So the mimes I typically like to draw and or see kind of in my mind. I like the kind of the triangles on the top of the eyebrows and then the triangles below the eyebrows, not the eyebrows, below the eyes. So, which is technically below the eyebrow. So I did not have to correct myself, but I felt necessary. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to draw the line so that I can line up for being symmetrical, and then I'll draw the points on it. And maybe if I choose to make some other mimes in the future, whether or not they're going to be skeletons or whether or not they're going to be some other figure, I might go with a different mime style makeup on those. But I think out of the gate, I want to do my kind of my favorite mime makeup. So I haven't quite made my mime up yet, but I have on this one. And the detail on this one is actually going pretty quick because I'm not confined to trying to hit some of the detail pieces. So I'm actually really happy with both the upper makeup points. And let me see if I can do some nice kind of triangles below. Trying to go very careful, very minimal amount of paint on here. And once I get the lines going, like the outside border of it, painting the inside is really easy because you don't have to worry about going over too much as long as you just have a little bit of paint on there. So then I'm just looking at the contours of the cheekbone, so this way I can kind of align that to try to get that symmetry going. And if it's not quite symmetrical, I think I've mentioned this before, it's a skeleton. He's got bony fingers. He might not be perfect in the makeup department, but I'd say he did a pretty decent job. So I'm very happy with his makeup job, and I'm very happy with his mimey look. So what we're gonna do now is we need a body for him. So we're just gonna clean up our paintbrushes because that is important to make sure that you can keep them as long as possible in good shape. It's going to help your painting and it's going to help your wallet so you don't have to keep buying paintbrushes. So what I'm going to do is just take a nice closer look at them. I'll probably do another black application on some of the back. You can still see some white spots, so just some cleanup work afterwards. But all in all, I'd say I'm pretty happy with the base details of it. So let's get our body going, which is our Mythic Legions skeleton. This was one of the Legion builders, so it's a kind of the no-named figure. And there he is, looking all smug with his skull head that he came with. Little does he know he is about to get a mime upgrade. The mime's already laughing, but the skeleton does not seem to be aware. So there's a hole in the bottom of it. This head was designed for Mythic Legions, so the peg in the head will fit. It probably needs a little bit of tack to just kind of make it fit, like snugly, because they don't want to break. So you can see it goes on and off. So we will have to kind of pad it a little bit so that it could move around for our stop motions. And there we go. Right now he looks like he's got no shoulders, or just kind of, or no neck. Looks a little bit shorter, so we'll fix that to give him a little bit of a neck. But I am very happy with the way this is turning out. I cannot wait to use him in some stop motions, which I'm going to put one at the end of this video. So stick around for the end if you want to enjoy a skeleton mime stop motion. And yeah, look at that guy. I cannot wait to play with him. There are so many mime jokes that I'm putting out there, really catering to the mime audience out there, which is a vast audience. They are the silent majority. So now what I'm going to do is, it came with like a wash, which is like for more like the rougher details on it. I don't know if I'm going to like it, but since this is my first try, I'm just going to test it out. If I don't like it, I could always paint it again. I'm not opposed to that. It might come out better, it might come out worse. But what you do with the wash is after you've painted your figure and you let it dry, you put it over and it kind of adds like that rougher, dirtier look to it. So that's good if you're like warriors or people who are on the battle. Kind of has that rugged look to it. This is a skeleton, so I think that works, and we're gonna find out. So it goes on. It looks like it dries a little bit clearer, so it just adds like a tone to it. This is the strong tone. There's two other tones that I saw in the booklet it came with. So there's a light one and a medium one. So if we don't like the darker one, we could always go with the lighter one. But like I said, I wanted to try it out, see if I'll use it in the future, and see how I like it on Mr. Mime Skeleton. Yeah, I gotta say, putting it on, I'm not absolutely in love with the look. I did like the more bright, vibrant white and black contrast that was on there. It gave it, in my opinion, a more like cartoonish look, which I happen to like cartoons and cartoonish action figures. So I like my gut is telling me I like the other version better, but there's also a Mythic Legions figure. So to fit the body, I think it actually works better to have it on there. So the figure as a whole, I think is probably better by having it. But my own personal aesthetic, I would almost like the mime to be a little bit more vibrant. So I don't know. It's kind of where I'm at. But like I said, if I don't like it, I could always repaint it. I know the design I want, and I probably don't have to do the whole thing over the teeth, the tongue. I don't have to do. What I can just do is the white accents to make it pop a little bit more. I don't have to touch the black. So it would not be a pain to go through and fix that. But I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to commit to it, and I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to work with it. And then if it doesn't grow on me, then you might see in some of my future Mime videos, he's got a much brighter face. And then you know he did another paint application, and that's the reason why, because of the wash. And for any of those eagle-eyed people out there, might notice that he now has a neck versus before when I put it on. I just took some clay and shoved it in there to keep his head from wobbling around as I painted. I will have to get some tack or something stickier to get it to kind of go in there so I can move it around. But hey, clay does a good job. It's steady, it's solid. And here's his final look. I can see that some of the wash pulled up a little bit, so we do have to wipe that off so it doesn't dry with a glob of chocolate pudding on his upper lip. So there we go. Honestly, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I do like it. It does give him like he was buried, he died in his mime makeup, and he started to decay, and it kind of like clung to his face. So it's not a clean look. It doesn't look like the opposite of like he's already a skeleton and then applied a fresh coat of makeup. So it does kind of change the story of like who is he? But I had a great time painting this, so I'm definitely going to do more. Thanks for watching.
Halt! Who goes there?
I am silent but deadly.
I thought mimes weren't supposed to speak.
Ugh.
Nope, I heard nothing.